Before we start creating our own classes, I think it's a good idea if we take a look at how students interact with Google Classroom, the types of activities you can assign to them, and what you might get back from them when you choose these assignment types. The first thing students will need to do is get into your class, and you can either do that by inviting them in your teacher screen, or you can give them a join code and they can join themselves. Depending on your class makeup and the age of your students, the choice is up to you. For this class, we're going to have the student enter a join code. So everybody has a plus sign, students and teachers. If you are a teacher, when you hover over this, you can join a class or create a class. Students can just join. So we're going to join a class. When you're getting a code, it's assigned to you by Google Classroom, and you can't pick your own code, but you can reset the code until you get one that your students will recognize. I don't like I's or L's, zeros or O's or Q's or G's because they're easy to mix up, but this one's pretty easy. There aren't any of those characters that a student might mistake for another character. So when they click join, it takes them directly to your classroom. If they're coming back to your classroom the next day, I'll show you the dashboard. Google likes to be very helpful. So anytime a student is new to a program or there's been an update, they get these pop-ups telling them things about the program. I used to tell kids to just X them out because I was telling them, but then I thought, I'm not always going to be there. So it's a good idea to teach your students to read these and to give them time and be ready for the transitions to take a little longer, because sometimes there's quite a few of these little pop-ups that happen. So the next day when students go into their Google Classroom, they're going to have a tile for your class on their desktop, and you just click the title. I was trying to click around in here at first, but if you just click the title of the class, it takes you back to the stream for this classroom. Now, the stream used to be the only place where students interacted with Google Classroom, but in a recent update, they added this Classwork tab, and now I don't find the stream to be that useful because it's chronological based on course activity. But if I put an announcement in this morning and then I made an edit to an assignment, my announcement would then become the second thing. And when I look through this, you guys get to see all the times I did different things in the class, but not necessarily in the order I want you to do them. So I'm not really enamored with the stream anymore, but the classroom work page is way better. It has the ability now to make these sections to organize your work, and there's a video that I'll put in your class that shows some different choices about how people want to use these organizationally. You've already seen this because you completed these two activities before we got to this place. Let's take a look at some assignments that kids can do. So if I click right here on the question, this kind of activity is where you can post a prompt and the student just posts a response. You get to choose whether or not students get to see each other's responses. And this can be a really great way to start writing activities with youngers because they don't have to go out and get involved with Google Docs. All of the writing can happen right here in Google Classroom. You as a teacher don't have the editability that you have with Google Docs, but you can see all of the kids' responses pretty quickly, and it's a nice way to get kids started with that kind of activity. Students would click on the assignment, then this view question is at the bottom of the tile, and you just click on that. In this particular question, I've included instructions for you as a teacher on how to create this activity, and then I've also included information for the students on how I want them to answer the question. So I want you in your response to include your target student group. If you want kids to provide 2 details, those kinds of things are good to put in the space where you ask the question. And then when students answer their question, when they're finished, they just click this turn in and watch the top area of the screen here, because once I turn it in, I get some new choices here. I can look at my answer, but now because I chose it as a teacher, students can look at their classmates' answers. So here's some different answers from the classmates, and then they can click this reply button and say what you want them to say. Now, it's probably a good idea before you start this kind of activity to prompt kids on what appropriate types of responses are to these questions, because it can get a little bit texty, or you don't want them saying, "Hi, Susan." Then they post their response and everybody in the class can see these threaded responses to the different questions. So that's an open response question. To get back to my stream, I can click the title of the course and then back to classwork. You can also ask multiple choice questions. And these can be great for taking polls with students or for doing a little temperature taking to see if they understood a comment. So I can click on my multiple choice question. Can you think of a way questions might be used to start a discussion in your class? I'm going to say yes. We're going to watch right here. When I click my Turnitin, I can choose whether or not students can see each other's responses. I know now that 2 other people besides myself had the same answer. So if you wanted to pick an activity or see how people felt about something, this is a good way for kids to see each other's feedback. You as a teacher can also go look and see what student answered what question. Sometimes you want to collect something that students have done in a Google Doc or slide, and before you used Google Classroom, students would share it with you, and then you'd have 27 emails with shares in them, and your share folder is impossible to organize. So although you could look at students' work, it was not easy to manage that workflow. With Google Classroom, you can create an assignment that allows you to collect a Google Doc or other kinds of activities too, if you happen to have a picture or something you want to collect. When the students view the assignment, look how it's helping us here again, they have the ability to add or create an assignment that is automatically shared with you as a teacher and put in a folder so that you could print them all easily, delete them all easily, instead of having them spread all over your shared with me. If your students have already started the activity before you make the Google Classroom assignment, they click Add, and then they can add an assignment from their Google Drive, add a link to another website, or they can upload a file, which would usually only happen if you were working on PCs. If you haven't started it yet, if they create the beginning document here instead of in the Google Drive, it does kind of a cool thing. If we're going to have them type us something, a report. If they start their assignment here, it actually creates the file for them in a folder that's shared with you, and it names it with the name of the student and the name of the activity. So your drive doesn't get all messed up. It's easy for the students to go find again, and all they do is click on that thumbnail or tile, and it opens up the Google Doc. Notice the name of it. And then already from your Google dashboard, you would be able to see what the student is doing, type in this assignment with them, or communicate with them however you would on a document. It's already shared with you. When the student's finished, they can choose to turn it in here, or you might choose not to have them turn it in, because turn in takes the editing rights away from the student, which might be what you want to do. But you're going to be able to see their work whether they turn it in or not. So that's something that you might want to experiment with and see how you feel about that. When the student is typing in here, you'll be able to see it right away. If you think you're ever going to print this, you want to make sure to tell them to put their name in the document, because otherwise you'll have a bunch of printed documents that you don't know who they belong to, because the name of the file does not print with the document. So going back to our Google Classroom, there's one more type of assignment that I want to show you right now, and that is submitting or distributing a file for students to complete and then turn into you. So back to my Classwork page, I have a document that I want students to interact with and then give it back to me. So I'm going to view the assignment. As a teacher, I created an activity here that I want them to complete. And there it is right here. The student can still add or create things to this assignment, but I just want them to complete this assignment. So they click on it and it opens up a template that they can type in. Now this particular template has a writing prompt down at the bottom. You'll get to see this up close when you do it. In there's some links to different things that we might want them to look at. I put my questions at the top of this document for 2 reasons. One, the kids can read them first and look for the stuff when they're going through the assignment. The other is that when I'm grading these, I don't have to scroll to the bottom of the activity to find the responses. And then when we're finished, they can either turn it in, or you will still be able to see it in your teacher dashboard. Why don't you head back to your Google Classroom and try these activities for yourself?
We'll see you in the next section.